You're listening to The Western Rookie, a hunting podcast full of tips, tricks, and strategies from seasoned Western hunters. There are plenty of opportunities out there. We just need to learn how to take on the challenges.
Hunting is completely different up there.
I've harvested 26 big game animals.
You can fool their eyes, but you can't fool their nose.
300 yards back to the road turned into 3 miles back the other way.
It's always cool seeing new hunters go and harvest an animal.
I don't know what to expect.
If there's anybody I want in the woods with me, it'll be you.
Welcome back to another Western Rookie podcast episode brought to you by GOHUNT. And today's episode is going to be a little bit special because we're bringing back everyone's second favorite Western Rookie host, Dan Mathews.
Wow. Second favorite already. They probably forgot about me by now. They're like, this guy's so great. I don't even remember the days before he was the host.
Well, I certainly hope so. If that's not the case, I would prefer people not let me know. And just let me be ignorant and blissful. But yeah, it's been about a year, man, since we started transitioning, since you started, we did, a couple months of dual hosts or co-hosts, and then you kind of officially left during the shed hunt in New Mexico and have been doing your own adventures since then. So I figured it'd be great to get you back on, kind of hear about what you've been doing and especially what you got planned for this next year, since it's kind of application season already.
Yeah, man, it's crazy that the applications are like upon us. And I've been actually talking with a bunch of different people about different plans for the season, because I've got to sort that out with Sam being pregnant. Luckily, she'll deliver well before season starts. But the spring is going to kind of be dictated by how she's feeling. So we'll kind of see how that goes.
Yeah, that's going to be a big wrench in your shed hunting season and turkey hunting season, I suppose, because that's kind of going to fall right in the middle of those two.
Yeah, I'm going to still try to get out and kill some turkeys this year. I don't really put a ton of time. In fact, I've never traveled anywhere else to turkey hunt, but I've had a lot of people offering hunts, and I'm like, I need to start taking people up on this. And so I might try to pair it with a couple family trips where I can sneak away for a day or two during the family trip and go out and kill some turkeys.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like Steven was all gung-ho to shoot some turkeys in Colorado if you ever wanted to take him up on that offer.
Yeah, I feel like Colorado would be a sweet spot. And, I mean, those birds out there are beautiful. Seeing the pictures that he sent us, I'd love to get out there. I know we're going to be down in Florida while Florida turkey season is going on, and I've got an open invite to go and really hunt anything on a 6,500-acre forestry lease. And they're like, dude, we've got everything out here. I mean, my buddy saw Florida panther on the road right behind him when he was deer hunting the other day. He's getting 70 plus turkey on camera every day. Deer, bear, you name it, they've got it. A lot of pigs too. So I'm like, man,
pythons?
No, he's far enough north in the state that I don't think they're really affected by pythons, but he does come across quite a few other snakes. I know there's gators still where he's at, and so there's a whole lot of wildlife that I wouldn't normally run into here in Missouri.
Yeah, man, living in Florida just has to be like an adventure every day of what's gonna scare me today.
Oh yeah, it seems like Florida is the Australia of the United States. Everything wants to bite you, sting you, eat you, and my wife is all about living in Florida, and I'm like, I just don't, I wouldn't feel comfortable with my kids just going and fishing a pond in Florida because a gator might come up and grab them.
Yeah, a small child would be nothing for a 12-foot gator.
Oh yeah.
Oh, hey, look at a cute little snake, and it turns out to be a water moccasin.
Yeah, I'm so unfamiliar with gators and snakes like that I don't react well to it. In fact, we were just down there over Christmas, and for part of the trip, we stayed with my sister-in-law, and she's at this really nice apartment in the middle of the city, and I took my dog out to go to the bathroom one day, and there were a bunch of ducks like right on the edge of the pond, and they were like clearly city ducks. They didn't care that we were there. My dog was very interested in them, but I was trying to get his attention elsewhere. And then I see something swimming in the water, like I saw ripples, and I was like, "Oh shoot, that's got to be a gator." And I'm looking, and all of a sudden this tiny little head pops up, and sure enough, there was a baby gator. Well, in the course of sitting there, I probably saw 10 or 12 baby gators within 5 feet of the bank.
Wow.
And all that told me was there's probably a mature gator in there that gave birth to these not that long ago.
Yeah.
And so I pulled my phone out. I was hoping to get like a nature is metal moment, seeing a gator come up and grab one of those ducks. But I told my sister-in-law about it, and she's like, "I've never seen a gator out there. Are you serious?" And I have video to prove it. So I was like, this is literally right there where you take your dog and go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I live in Minnesota, which is basically, not too much different than where you grew up in Wisconsin. There's like nothing out here to hurt you.
Yeah, I mean, unless you have a small dog, maybe a hawk or an eagle, and then, I mean, even the fish there. Like I know that pike and muskie will grab ducklings, but their odds of them trying to attack a dog, even a small dog, is pretty little.
Yeah,
so,
that wouldn't really do anything. Maybe a coyotes on small dogs. We have wolves up north, but I don't think that's really too much of an issue. I'm just kind of thinking through like what things could, like a snapping turtle. Like if you stepped on a snapping turtle, that might be bad.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah, that would suck.
That's not really a common enough thing to like worry about. Versus like checking your shoes every time you put them on to see if like a scorpion or a spider crawled in them.
Dude, that's what I don't understand is places with things like that. I mean, we were at a friend's house in Florida. It would have been last summer, and I was walking across their floor, and I was barefoot, and I looked, and same exact type of thing. There's a tiny little scorpion walking across their floor. And I was like, are you kidding me? There's just I'm walking barefoot. What if I hadn't looked down and stepped right on it? I don't know how deadly they are, or if they are. Maybe it just stings and hurts for a while. But again, it's so foreign to me that it freaked me out pretty bad. Every time I put my shoes on, I shook them out after that. If I picked clothes up or really anything up off the floor, I was checking to make sure there wasn't one hiding in them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, I got bit by a spider this weekend in Minnesota.
Ooh.
So, I assume it was a
What
spider.
kind of spider?
I have no idea. I just woke up the next day and I had like a big red welt in the middle. And it was like there's like a little ball inside of it, whatever. And I'm like, man, I was doing some wood pile stuff, chopping some wood, cleaning out the shop, doing some, random, homestead chores. And I'm like, I bet I got, bit by a spider or something. But it's just crazy. Like, and it didn't hurt at all. And now it's gone. So it's not the end of the world. But to be fair, I did get bit by a spider in Minnesota.
Dang. Yeah, I don't like spiders. I'm not, they're definitely not the worst thing out there. Like, I would much rather come across spiders than a snake. I don't like snakes at all.
Yeah, one thing that I'm not a fan of would be like a spot and stock Western hunt where you're like crawling and you see a rattlesnake, you find a rattlesnake just looking at you in the face. Or in that same spirit, all these guys that hunt in places where there's timber rattlesnakes just cruising through the woods, and you're like, I've seen like TikToks where a dude will be in his stand and like a 5-foot timber rattler's like going right across underneath his tree, and I'm like, hell no. Like, are you guys wearing like snake boots everywhere? Like, you're walking around in the dark. Like, I'm assuming snakes aren't super active at night. I don't know anything really about snakes, but like those two, I think definitely crawling up on one out west, like on a spot and stock antelope hunt, would be by far worse. But just the fact that like there could be there is a timber rattler somewhere in these woods at all times would also not be great.
Well, especially with like certain types of elk and mule deer hunting, or even where we were in New Mexico shed hunting. I'm like, it just seems like the perfect area for them to be hanging out. Underneath the rocks, there's so many boulders. It's like you step over a log, and you really have to kind of look every time you step over a log. I found I think I told you about my first shed that I found on my hunting property in Missouri. I wasn't even shed hunting, but I was walking through the woods, and in this same spot, I had like a 7-foot black rat snake that had crossed in front of me probably a month or two prior. And I was walking, and it just, every time I walk on that spot in the trail, I think about that, and I step over a log, and I look down because I'm like, dude, I don't want a snake to be here again. And that's where I found my first whitetail shed in Missouri.
Okay, first of all, I've never seen a 7-foot snake, which would be terrifying. The biggest thing I've ever seen is like a 2.5-foot gardener snake. You know, they're big for a gardener snake, but not a big snake. So 7-foot snake would be intimidating. But I feel you're like, I don't know, you're worried, because there's one day at our old house, my wife has a cat, and so I let the dog out, and for some reason this cat just bolted out the door between my legs right after him, and the cat's obviously not supposed to go outside. And so I'm like, crap. And I'm barefoot. It's first thing in the morning. I'm wearing like gym shorts and a hoodie. And so I run out after this thing, and the cat goes like across our landscaping and then like down our stone steps out into the grass. And so I'm running off the steps, and I go like off the first to the second step, and I put my foot down. And as I look, there's a snake on the first, like just below the top, like on the first step down,
dude.
like 4 inches from my foot. But I was moving so fast, like there's no time to, do anything. I just kept going, and I'm like, oh boy. And it's just a gardener snake, but still, when you almost put your foot down on it and you don't even know, like you're barefoot. So that was not great. So I grabbed the cat, throw the cat, like, I hope my wife doesn't listen to this, throw my cat through the door, like the door's open, like on the other side of the couch so it can't get out again in time. And then I close the door, I quick grab a shovel, run back to like go chop the snake in half, and it's gone. And I'm like, shoot.
Oh, gosh.
It was like the worst way to start a morning.
Dude, there's something in all of us. Like, I don't care who you are. When you see a snake that you weren't expecting to be there, even the guys, I've never been around one of these guys, but the dudes who like catch pythons, or there's a guy online who always like yoinks animals.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
like, oh, look at this cool animal, yoink.
Swamp
It's
puppies and danger noodles.
Yeah. When you're walking and there's one there that you didn't expect, there's that like heart drop moment where, holy cow, like I almost just stepped on this snake. And I haven't had any experience with like water moccasins. I've seen plenty of those in Missouri. Typically we're fine. I did kill one that was literally coming after one of the kayaks while we were on the river. And the girl in the kayak was screaming, and I walked up and I smacked this thing with a paddle. And then I've seen 2 rattlesnakes, one in Arkansas and one in Colorado. And other than that, that's really the extent of experience I have with venomous snakes.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I think the guy you're talking about in the Florida Everglades, and he usually doesn't just yoink the pet venomous ones, but still, like, I don't really want to touch any snake. But I've never seen a venomous snake, live on the hoof. I've seen a dead rattlesnake in a parking lot in Nebraska, and it still scared me. I didn't realize it was dead at first. It was like right next to the sidewalk. Like, you'd think the people that like killed it, it was like a tourist center, like I think it was for Chimney Rock. And the lady found it when she went to put the flag up on the flagpole. And so she killed it with a shovel, but she left it like a foot off the sidewalk. And so I'm walking up, and I'm like, the sign says there might be rattlesnakes, but it's just Nebraska. They probably just have to say that. And I look down, and there's a rattlesnake like a foot off the cement next to my leg. And I'm like, took off. And then I saw the shovel, and I put 2 and 2 together, and I'm like, well, at least you could have moved it, like thrown it off the side, so people aren't seeing it. But yeah, not a fan of snakes, not a fan at all. And I remember asking Steven about that when we were shed hunting in New Mexico. I was like, what are the chances we're going to find a snake? And he's like, well, I don't know. They're here. I don't see a lot of them. I think it's early. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't really instill confidence in me, Steven.
No, not at all. I thought the same thing when he said that. I'm like, it would have been much better if you were like, dude, I hardly ever see them. Like
Right.
they're out, but you're not going to see one. And instead it was like, oh, they're definitely out here.
Yeah. It's
I was
almost like
oh,
that.
and we're reaching down to pick things up off the ground when we find them.
Yeah, that part doesn't bother me as much because you can typically like see everything around it. But I was gonna say, it's like, when you're walking, and you probably felt this when you found that first elk shed after like all that time while hiking, but then you found a couple nice ones. When you like look to the side and you see a shed like at 5 feet, like it's right there, and you like it's just instant. You're not like, is that a tine? I don't know, but it's just boom right there, and you instantly get like filled up, like that's just a wave of adrenaline. It's like the same thing with the snake, except in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. My fear was that, and I didn't think about this in the moment, which is probably an issue. But like when I would find a shed, I'd be so excited about it that I wasn't really paying attention to anything else. Luckily, I would go up and take pictures and stuff first. But my first instinct is like, dude, go and grab it. And in that moment, I don't think at all about, oh, what if there's a snake here? Because I'm not used to having to worry about that. And now, hindsight, thinking back on it, I'm like, I probably should have kind of scanned the ground to make sure there wasn't something hanging out right next to it.
Yeah, how funny would it be if you take like your as they lay picture and then you pick it up and you're whatever, and then you get home and you're showing your wife or something, and she's like, you grabbed that right next to the snake? And you're like,
oh, dude,
what do you mean? And then there's like a rattlesnake like coiled up right behind the shed or something that you never saw.
That's the thing of nightmares, man. I would not like that at all.
Like you always see those pictures of people posing in the West, and then they get home and there's like a set of eyes in the background.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, it's a mountain lion. And it's like, it's probably a deer, but whatever. Yeah, I don't know if those are usually made up or not, but it would be kind of like that, where you're like, you had no idea how close to danger you really were.
Yeah, I've done that with like phone scope videos where I'm looking at something and I didn't even realize there was another thing in the frame, whether it be another elk or a coyote or something like that. But I've had that happen before where I'm like looking back. In the moment, I was so focused on what I was looking at that I didn't notice the flicker of another tail or a coyote. I've had that with trail camera pictures, actually. I've got a couple of like a buck, and I get the picture, and then I download the HD video. And when I get the video, it's 10 seconds long and not just a snapshot. And I notice like a coyote moving in the background behind the buck.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a couple of those come through the other night where there was a couple of hidden coyotes. We have like a pack of coyotes by this new farm. That's huge, like 12 coyotes.
Jeez.
And sometimes they go off and I'll be laying in bed and I can hear them from like inside the house with all the windows closed. So they're relatively close, like closer than I've ever heard coyotes from inside a house before.
Man, we've got a serious issue with coyotes in Missouri. And I actually brought my AR and just a mouth call, coyote call up with me in case I decide to sneak out tomorrow and hunt. But it just seems like the predator issue is becoming more and more prevalent at my hunting properties. But I think they've become pretty smart to call because I just don't seem to have luck calling them, even though I get them on camera every night now. And I've had more bobcats on camera this year than I have in probably the 10 years I've hunted this property combined.
We've only had one ever. Like one bobcat we've had on, like, you could tell it's the same bobcat because it's kind of like the same couple days, and that he hit a couple different cameras, but it's, we've only had one in Minnesota. But I think it's like no one traps anymore, which I think I'm going to start trapping a little bit. But I think that's a big part of it is, like no one's going after these predators anymore.
No, and I would love to trap. Unfortunately, I mean, I can trap on my 25 acres, but I talked to the guy who leases my main hunting property. He leases it for cattle and crops. And I was like, dude, how would you feel about me setting traps out there? And he's like, man, we've got a couple dogs and they like to kind of run around, and I just wouldn't want one of them getting caught in it. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That sucks because I have never come up on a bobcat or a coyote in a trap. I've never really set traps before.
Yeah.
So it's something that I definitely want to get into, but I also don't think I have the time to add another outdoor hobby.
Yeah, that's the issue. So what I'm going to do, and I'm surprised I haven't seen this yet, but I'm going to set some of my, I have the same tact cams you have, and they're all solar panels, so the batteries last forever. And I'm going to put some out on the property where I've been seeing tracks. I'm going to suck for a while, right? Like trapping's not easy, but I'm going to put the camera on the trap set, and then I'm going to I probably will turn the video up a little bit to like 30 seconds because I'm not going to get a ton of hits. And that way, when a coyote comes through, obviously I'll see a picture, be like, oh, cool, it's in a good spot. But then the video will catch and I'll like see what's going on. Like, oh, you know, he smelled it, but he didn't put his foot in the right spot. You know, maybe I have to change something. Or hopefully, you know, boom, got him. And now I have a trail camera picture. So I don't even have to go check my trap until I catch something. So I'm not wasting time and I'm not, you know, putting more scent on the ground. And it's just right behind my house. So as soon as I catch one, I'll know and I can just go out the next morning and take care of it.
I wonder, I mean, I don't know what the legality of that is in Minnesota. In Missouri, you have to check your traps every 24 hours. And I don't know if that would be, if I could electronically check them with a camera like that or not. But
well, yeah,
that's one big thing that I have to deal with.
You can set your, I don't know either. It's a good question. You know, because you could set your check-in, you could turn your camera to do a check-in photo once a day and be like, look, officer, I checked my trap. You know, it hasn't had, I feel like it'd probably be a headache, but you would probably win that in a court of law.
I feel like you would, especially because you can prove like, hey, look,
right.
I checked, I know every 24 hours, but then I think their rebuttal to that would be, well, did you actually look at the picture or do you just get them sent to your phone?
Well, I would say, of course, I looked at the picture. Who has cell cameras and doesn't look at the pictures?
Oh, dude, it doesn't matter what time, day or night. If my camera goes off, I'm checking it.
Yeah,
so,
I'm sure someone will write in and be like, yeah, that's highly illegal. There's like, here's the law that says you cannot use trail cameras to trap coyotes.
See, and I could definitely see it being like that where, hey, you can't have a trail camera set up or you can't use that to electronically check it. It has to be an in-person check every 24 hours. That might be something I call in about to Missouri Department of Conservation, because even on my 25 acres, I've got a bobcat, and it's about every 2 weeks it'll come through like 3 nights in a row.
Oh, really?
And then it disappears, and then it comes back. But yeah, this year I've had, man, I don't know how many different bobcats it is, but I've had probably 24 pictures of bobcats this year, and two of the pictures had 2 adult bobcats in the video, and then I had one earlier this year that was a cub or a kitten or whatever a young bobcat's called, and a mature bobcat in the same video.
It's probably got a family.
So yeah, it's been, and the thing is, man, they're right, like where I sit in the stand is where I see them crossing all the time. I'm pretty sure I know where they're denned up because there's a couple brush piles in the woods that I see them the most at. And they came through and logged the woods, I think 3 seasons ago now. And then they left a bunch of like the junk that they had to just push out of the way to get the dozer in piled up. And so I'm like, it seems like a perfect spot for them. And where they're crossing the fence is like 50 yards from that brush pile. So I've got a pretty good feeling that's where they're hanging out at. I just don't know a whole lot about bobcats to know if they use the same den all the time, if they use different dens all the time. But there's nights where I've got 8 coyotes and a bobcat all on camera on the same camera. So
yeah, well, you should definitely figure out if you can use your trail cameras to check them then, because that would be 8 coyotes would be great. And I feel like if you really think about it, there's a lot of pros to using a trail camera. And, you know, I really couldn't think of a con. Like, you know, like if you were going to use a drone for elk hunting, it's like, okay, well, there's some obvious like red flags. Like have a really unfair advantage over the elk at this point because you could fly the drone up and pinpoint where this elk is, and then you could go shoot it with a rifle. But with the trap, I really think the only thing that would give you an advantage is like you can see what's working and what's not working and just learn how to trap faster. But you know, your trail camera is not bringing them in. You can't change your trap, you know, because you saw one walk 10 feet the other way. Like you have to go out there and change the trap, and then it's too late, obviously. But if you start thinking about it, it's like, well, it's better for the coyotes because you can see right away when you get one, so you could go out and get it right away. It's better for the environment. Like you're not wasting as much gas driving around checking your traps every day. And you know, we have a huge issue with like, you know, Ducks Unlimited talks about like all the meso predators because no one's trapping and how it's so hard on like duck recruitment and like ground nested birds. And it's like, well, in order to fix that, like we need to be more efficient trappers. How do you get more efficient? Like, well, learn faster, like have better tools. And I just feel like that would be like a little hack. If it's legal, I feel like it would be a hack. If it's not legal, I can see why no one's ever talked about it.
Yeah, I feel like anything that makes it more ethical or like allows you to get to the animal quicker, because that's the type of thing. If I had a bobcat or a coyote in a trap, I would get out there immediately. If my trail camera goes off, I see it. You know, now it's not sitting there for potentially 23 hours before being checked. I would rather get out there and efficiently put it down. But the one thing that I do really want to do, regardless of bobcat or coyote trapping, is put out some dog-proof raccoon traps, because the raccoons are another one that I've been having a serious issue with. And these things are fat. If I had a bigger area to hunt, I would get hounds out there. But because it's not a huge area, I think I'm going to have to resort to trapping them.
I'm there with you. We have a ton of raccoons at our family farms back home because it's more woods, like woods ag. And we get pictures all summer long on trail cams of like big chunky ground pandas, you know, running around in our food plots. Problem is like the whole 24-hour rule, like I can't, you know, even if I use trail cameras and Alec, I still like wouldn't be able to check I wouldn't be able to go get the raccoon on a random Tuesday. And so I can't do that. But there's a ton of them, and I'm assuming we have them here too, because we have like lots of oak trees, and it's not as much ag. But if we do have them, I'm definitely setting some dog proofs, because you know I want to hunt turkeys on the farm here, because I've never shot a turkey. I've never really hunted them either. But if it's like right out my back door, I would love to try.
Yeah, dude, the raccoons. I shot one with my bow this year, and my buddy was hanging in the same tree as me with a camera, and he filmed it. And that was pretty crazy. We actually had 3 of them come in while we were deer hunting. Like they all came in together late morning, like a weird time to see raccoons out and about. And I've had that multiple times where I see raccoons. I had another instance. I had 2 raccoons come in one night. It was probably 3 hours before legal shooting light ended. Had 2 of them come in. And it's like they're active all the time. And I'm pretty sure I know what tree they're in. There's a big leaned over tree that's all hollowed out. And so I don't know. Man, I don't know if I'd have more fun trying to trap one of those, or if I would have more fun predator calling in. Because I've seen videos of guys doing that where they put out a call like a Fox Pro, and they put a raccoon distress call, and those raccoons come in frantically. And they shoot them.
Really?
I think both of those would be pretty fun. Yeah, I saw one earlier this year where it just came sprinting in. The guy had like this really rough looking raccoon. It wasn't a stuffed raccoon, but you know how they make those rabbit, it's almost like a sock, but it like shakes, and they use them for
decoys
for coyotes. It was like that. Just a little like fake sock raccoon decoy. And this raccoon came flying in and tackled it. And I was like, dude, that is sweet. And it was only 5 feet from the guys, and they ended up shooting it. But I feel like anytime you can call an animal in is pretty exciting. So that might be my focus as soon as whitetail season's over, is getting out, killing some predators, and hopefully get the numbers back up for the deer and the turkeys.
Yeah, I can hear that. So in addition to doing some predator hunting, either trapping or hunting them, have you started working on the rest of your plan? So obviously all the listeners know you are a pretty dedicated rifle elk hunter. I assume you're going back
Yeah.
to rifle elk camp this year in Colorado again?
So I actually don't know about that. I might switch over and do my first archery hunt for elk in
Ooh.
Colorado this year.
Finally
Yeah,
got to ya.
well, so it was kind of a forced thing. I kept saying like, man, I'll probably never archery hunt Colorado for elk until, I get points to draw a major unit.
Right.
But this year, I don't know if it was a late winter or everybody talked about the winter kill. We didn't see any evidence of winter kill where we hunted. No deadheads, no carcasses, nothing.
Really?
And so I was like, man, I don't know that that's what happened, but I think maybe the late winter coming in didn't push the elk into that area yet. But we saw a record low number of elk this year. I mean, I'm talking our whole camp all together, I think we saw 30 elk.
Yeah, and you guys have like 30
normally,
hunters, so.
Oh, normally, like that's a morning hunt.
Right.
You see that many. Like one guy will see that many. We've seen as many as 12 to 1,500 in a week.
Yeah.
And now down to 30. It sounds like a lot of the guys basically are wanting to pull the plug on that area. And for me, I'm like, man, if I'm going to go explore a new area, I might want to do it with my bow. So I think this year might be the year that I dive into archery hunting with my bow.
Yeah, that's
or archery hunting. Oh,
archery hunting with your bow, not your crossbow.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a great time to be out in the woods walking around. I mean, the weather's typically a lot better. I love it, man. Archery elk hunting is a blast. I also, though, might not be doing the normal elk hunt myself.
Oh, really? The Montana one?
Well, we state hop because we were running out of points in some of the units. So last year we did archery elk in Colorado with Steven. He came out for a day and hunted with us, gave us some tips and some spots to check out. But no, I think the group will be headed back to Montana, I believe, this year, which is our second favorite spot. But this is the first year my wife is out of residency. She's done with everything, related to her career, and she's just, staff at the hospital now. And so this was going to be her first real chance to get out west and do a Western hunt. And so we're going to do that together instead. And so we're doing,
Nice.
She picked antelope as the first hunt, which I think is a great choice.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do a rifle antelope hunt. And then just with everything going on, I don't know if we can swing 2 big hunts per year with vacation days is basically what it comes down to. And so we're going to do that for sure. And then we'll obviously be hunting, as much as we can otherwise. And I think we're trying to plan a shed hunt. I don't know if we're going to be able to do like New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado again with Steven, just because it probably takes more days than we'll have for it.
Yeah.
But I think we want to get out somewhere, minimum South Dakota, where I've typically gone, but hopefully maybe Wyoming or Montana.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Yeah.
I actually just talked to Steven on Tuesday on my podcast.
Oh,
and
perfect.
We talked about shed hunting, and he's like, you just tell me when. He went out the other day. He was going to be a line hunt, and I don't know if a lack of snow kind of bumped that or what, but he's like, I ended up just going out shed hunting. He said he was only about 5 minutes from where we camped, and he went out and found 6 elk sheds. And I mean, they were all last year's, obviously. They haven't dropped yet this year.
Right.
But yeah, he went out and found 6, and I was like, man, just thinking about that every time I see the sheds from out there, it lights that fire again, and I really want to get back and do that. So I think that's on the card or in the books for this year. I'm going to try to get out and do that. I'll be back out in Colorado, like I said, for elk hunting, and hopefully, I just don't know, man. It's tough for me. Do I get an over-the-counter tag, which I think I might do? There's a couple of guys out there that offered to take me out, and they're like, if we have 5 guys, we're typically filling 4 tags out of the 5. And so I'm like, well, shoot, man, those are really good odds.
Right.
If they if they're down to still take me this year, I might go do that. I just don't know how many points that unit is, because I think I'm at 7 points now for Colorado.
Ooh.
But it's like, if it costs any points and it's not just an over the counter, it's like I don't really want to burn my points on a 1 point unit when I could try to draw a better one.
For sure not. So like I'm sure you heard in the intro, but we've got GOHUNT as the title sponsor of the show. And so we've been doing a lot of focus on research and point strategies, and we got a whole bonus series of like draw odds and doing a bonus episode before each of the state's deadlines. And so I've just been spending a lot more time than you already know I spend on this whole topic of points. But like 7 points in Colorado for elk is like the beginning of no man's land. So if I were you, I would really look and be like, I'd be tempted to spend those 7 points on like the best tag you can get, because, when I was in that position 4 years ago, 5 points at that time was like, you can get some pretty good units for 5, but then it takes like 12 to really get anything better. And so I'm sure by now, 4 years later, that might be 7. And that's kind of where you're like, do I spend these now, or do I really just wait and not really get anything better for like 6, 8 more years? And that sucks. Like thinking about that. So I feel you. It's like, man, I definitely agree with you, though. It would be a shame to have to spend those for a 1 point unit.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm sitting with the whole thing. I mean, I think I'm definitely going to put in for Utah again, try to draw a buck tag for out there where me and my friend Linnea hunted a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That would be a really fun hunt with my bow. But I had a buddy, Austin. He's got his own podcast, but we've hunted together for a long time now. He went out to Colorado with a few friends this year. First time ever elk hunting, first time archery elk hunting. And they got out there and they talked to this guy at a local shop, and they were like, hey man, any pointers? He goes, you know what? I'll tell you this. Go out, try to find some elk. They got out there a couple days before season, and he's like, if you can't find elk, come back and I'll give you a spot to go. And so they went out and they were just struggling. I mean, they had a really hard time even seeing an elk. And they ended up going back into town for something, talked to him, and he's like, go check this area. Well, his first day hunting, they were hanging out. They call these 2 bulls in, and he gets a shot at one of them at 40-something yards. He doesn't know. He thinks it was on his sleeve, but his string from his bow caught something, and the arrow didn't make it to the elk.
Oh, wow.
And the 2 elk run off, and they get the one to stop by cow calling at it. It stops at 83 yards, and he puts a frontal shot on it and kills it within 40 yards.
Oh my
I mean, like a perfect frontal shot. He's got it on video. He sent it to me. He's like, dude, you'll never believe this. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a 4x5, I think. And he's just like over the moon. But he's like, dude, that was a 0 point, just an over-the-counter unit. Went out there, and luckily with some advice from a total stranger, we went out there and found some elk.
Yeah,
so that gave me hope to be like, I know that's not common. Nobody does that. In fact, when they ran into a game warden, and he was asking, and he's like, oh, so how long have you been doing this? He's like, dude, this is literally my first year. And he's like, there's no way you went out on opening day and killed an elk, your first time ever archery elk hunting. And he's like, yeah, dude. And the game warden's like, dude, I don't run into people like that very often. Like, congrats.
Yeah, that's a crazy story. I'm not sure I'm confident enough in my archer abilities to do a 80-yard frontal shot, but clearly it worked for him. But yeah, that's kind of the same story. I mean, I had a bull our first day elk hunting. Steven was trying to call it in. It was 58 yards, and there's just a tree in the way of its vitals. I could only see its like back half, but not my first day archery elk hunting, but first day in a over-the-counter unit in Colorado, and almost sealed the deal, man. It was crazy. Like, it happens.
Dang.
Like, it's definitely, I had 2 bulls under 60 that trip. One of our guys had a shot at like 23, and he accidentally missed. Clean missed.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so he was drawing, and the elk's walking out, he's drawing, and he's one of those archers that like draws high and then slowly drops his pin down to where he wants it. And he's
Yeah.
like, it was like a 23-yard shot, I think. And he's like,
Oh,
when
no.
I remember when my 40 pin hit the top of his back, the bull like saw me and like jumped and startled, and then I got scared and jumped and startled and accidentally punched the trigger, and my arrow went like, a foot over his back. And
Dang.
then the bull stayed around for a while. He almost had a shot at 40, but he accidentally grabbed his grouse arrow out of his quiver for the second shot, and that kind of messed him up because he had it like knocked by the time he realized it was his grouse arrow. And
Oh,
yeah, so that was a real bummer. And then the funny thing was, like 4 days later or 3 days later, some of our guys like went back to that spot and they searched the mountainside and found his arrow and gave it to him as a consolation prize for joining the I Missed an Elk Club.
oh, dude, that's funny, man.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know what
can't
to do with
imagine.
this arrow anymore. And one of the guys like, I'd clean it off and shoot something with it, kill something with it, get the luck back.
Yeah, redemption arrow.
So
Dang, man. I think that would be like pretty high up on my list of things to do in 2024. Funny enough, I got a message from somebody I would have never expected to message me out of the blue the other day, and that is Jim Shockey.
Oh, really?
Dude, just messaged me on Instagram. I woke up, checked my trail cameras like I always do when I wake up, and then opened up Instagram, saw I had a message and looked, and I'm like, no way, there's no way this is actually him. And sure enough, we've been kind of talking back and forth in Messenger, and he's going to hop on my podcast. And I'm like, dude, I would, if I could have anybody on the planet guide me on my dream hunt, which is archery moose, it would be him.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so you better believe when I talk to him, I'm going to be like, hey, man, you got any openings coming up? Because my wife keeps telling me, like, you just need to finally go and do it. You need to finally go and do it. And we were trying to plan an Alaska trip this past year because I had 3 of my friends turn 40. And I was like, we need to go to Alaska. We need to go do something big. But that all fell through. So that might be in the cards for 2024. If I can chat with my wife, get the okay from her. And obviously that would be after delivery. So I might be in the clear.
Yeah, that would be a huge hunt. Hopefully he's got like a late cancellation or something, because I would imagine a guy like Jim Shockey books up like years in advance. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think he does. But I mean, the whole time I've been talking about and kind of planning an archery moose hunt, it hasn't been guided. I've always wanted to do it unguided, a fly in, float out, like float a river system, a couple 100 miles or however far over the course of 9-10 days, and just get to high points, glass, call, see what I can make happen. And I've seen a lot of people be successful with that. I'm not going to be super picky. Right. I know there's very, very strict antler restrictions for moose. But, if a legal bull comes in, there's no way I'm going to be able to pass anything up if it's legal. And so, I mean, that's always been my goal. I've never even considered doing a guided hunt. But now in talking with him, I'm like, that would probably be more of a dream hunt than an unguided hunt, is to do a guided hunt with him. The problem is the price tag increases significantly when you go guided.
Yeah, that's a spendy hunt. I think there's a lot, like probably a good solid 4 zeros behind that number.
Yeah.
So, but it would be a sweet, like, I would think giant moose would be probably one of my top picks for sure. But I've been recently kind of thinking more along the lines of just biting the bullet and figuring it out for over-the-counter do-it-yourself moose in Alaska, which there's a lot more tags than people think. Everyone thinks like you have to go guided in Alaska, but that's just not true. I mean,
you don't.
There's only 3 species where you have to go guided in Alaska, and the rest of them,
grizzly, mountain goat, and bighorn, right? Or is it Dall sheep?
I think it's Dall.
Dall sheep.
It's one of the sheep. It's the brown bears, mountain goats, and one of the sheep.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, other than that, and I'm thinking like, yeah, it's still going to be an expensive hunt. Like it's probably still going to be, probably a 4-figure bill by the time you travel to Alaska, line up your logistics, buy the tag. But that's something where you could budget for like maybe every 2, 3, 4 years, and you could do
Yeah.
it theoretically like 5 to 10 times, depending on everyone's means and vacation and whatever. But I'm like, if you got into moose hunting like every other year or every 3 years, like you probably shoot a couple moose in your lifetime versus saving your entire life to go on one extravagant hunt where you're still like 50% odds, and you're so old by the time you have the money to do it that you can't really do it the same way you wanted to anyway.
See, I've done a lot of research over the years on moose hunting in Alaska, and really, I don't think, oh dang man, I'm watching 2 bald eagles as I'm driving down the hallway or driving down the highway doing the death spin. You know when they lock talons?
I thought that was their breeding case. Like,
well, I just call it the death spin. I don't know what it is, but dude, just I wish I could have pulled over. I'm right next to a semi. That was sweet.
I
Anyway,
thought that was how they that's like part of their mating ritual.
I think it's isn't it the 2 males that do it?
Well, I don't know.
It's like,
maybe.
It could be. I don't know. I've just seen it on National Geographic. I've never seen it in person. That was crazy. But as I've been doing my research, I think I could actually get an over-the-counter moose hunt, do the whole thing for under $4,000, not counting getting the meat back. I don't know how much that's going to cost, but I do know that most airlines you can ship meat back for the price of an extra bag, because we did that with blacktail deer and salmon. When we brought all that back, we brought 75 pounds of it back, and I think it cost us about $300 extra to get all of our meat back.
Well, to be fair, there's quite a bit difference between 2 fish and a black-tailed deer and a moose.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. But it's like, even if that bill was another 2,000 or 3,000, that's under the $10,000 mark. And with Alaska Air, I've told a lot of people this, and I think maybe you and I have talked about it. Alaska Air credit card, they've got a deal where if you put $1,000 on your credit card, you get a buddy ticket for free.
Oh, really?
And so literally a round trip ticket. So that means, like, say you and I go to Alaska, I buy a ticket, you get a free ticket round trip, but it has to be on the same flights as me.
Yeah.
But then we just split the cost of my ticket, and now, we're looking at $500 round trip a piece to get to Alaska and back.
Yeah.
And then the bush plane, that's going to be the other big expense, but the actual tag itself isn't that much.
No, it's pretty much on par with any elk tag in America, really.
Yeah. I mean, in looking at it, I figure I can do an Alaska trip, not counting getting meat back, for the same price, if not cheaper, as it will cost me to do a Colorado moose hunt once I draw a tag. Because last year, the non-resident moose tag was $2,400. And it's $100 per preference point.
Right.
And on average, you're probably looking at 18 to 20 years, if you're lucky, before you get to draw. And so it's like, all right, so 13 years from now, I'm going to be $2,000 into the moose hunt with still only a chance of drawing. And that's if the tag price doesn't increase, and if the preference point price doesn't increase, which they both will.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, you're starting to see that everywhere. Like Montana's preference point went up to $100 too, and it's like, oof. To hunt elk, in Montana, or deer in Montana, it's $100 just to buy the point. And so, yeah, Alaska really isn't that expensive. It's logistically a nightmare, and it's unknown, which I think scares a lot of people once you have to like incorporate an airplane, not only an airplane but also a bush plane. I think it's like double whammy where people are like, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go, but I feel like it would be such a valuable skill for like an avid outdoorsman to like figure out how to hunt Alaska, because there's so much opportunity up there, and figure
For
out
sure.
how to do it DIY specifically. Because I could call Jim Shockey tomorrow and be like, hey, put me on your next available elk hunt and write a check, or not elk hunt, moose hunt. And, that's easy. He's gonna be like, all right, fly into this airport on this day. I've got a gun for you. Just bring your camo. Here's the checklist. Bring all this stuff. I'll pick you up. And it's like, yeah, you could do that if you have the money. And if I had the money, I probably would. But it's such a valuable skill to figure out, like spring bear, moose hunting every year, caribou hunting every year. Like all these opportunities that are not that expensive, comparatively, just the logistics. And I've had a couple people on this podcast from Alaska, and one of them was a sea charter. They did like sea duck hunting and sea fishing charters for certain species. And he said, if you live anywhere reasonably close to like a freight international, like a Delta freight hub, so like not your little Podunk airport, but like at MSP is a Delta freight hub. He's like, it's actually pretty cheap to ship stuff. I mean, it would just be the same as like shipping anything anywhere. And so it's like, well, I would drive across the state of Minnesota to save $400 on shipping a moose. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't even have to. It's in my backyard. For you, like you might have to drive to, St. Louis, but how hard is that? You probably land in St. Louis anyway when you fly home.
3 hours, 3-hour drive. That's nothing. I mean, that just even makes it more doable in my mind.
Right.
And in looking at the different tag prices in Alaska, like I wouldn't go up there with only a moose tag in my pocket, for around $1,500, I think for under $2,000, I could have an active moose, black bear, caribou, and wolf tag. I think wolf tags, last I checked, were $50.
Yeah, they're pretty cheap. We just did the Alaska application bonus episode because it was December 15th, 13th, 15th, I think, was the Alaska deadline for apps. And so they I don't know if you already know this, but they have the locking tags. And so your locking tag is based on the dollar value of your animal. So, and they're free. You have to have like your permit and then the locking tag. And the locking tag is like the actual metal band you put on your harvested animal, like sheep have plugs. Yep. And so basically, like muskox was the most expensive animal. And so if you buy the $2,000 muskox permit, you could go get a free locking tag for your muskox, because you have to anyway. But then you could get a free locking tag for every other animal in Alaska that you don't need a guide for. And you could use your muskox permit to shoot one of any of those other lesser value animals that you obviously don't need a guide for, and use that, corresponding locking tag. So essentially, you could go to Alaska with your moose tag, but then whatever's the next most valuable, maybe a caribou, maybe, muskox, obviously, if you want to spend $2,000, but you wouldn't need all three, because realistically, you're not going to shoot 4 animals, right? You're like a moose, and then I'll get the caribou, but I could also shoot a black bear or a wolf with that, my bonus tag, basically, right? And then or you could do 2, right? Who knows? But I've never went on a hunt.
And that's where I would have to go. I would have to go with the 2 most expensive. And my whole thought is like, I'm the what if guy. What if I do go up there with the intent of shooting a moose, even if I just do a rifle hunt, so that it puts all of these other animals on the table, or more realistic expectation of getting something. Right. I'm like, I wouldn't be able to pass up a wolf. I know that for a fact, because that's very high up on my list also. And so it's like, say I wolf and I take the wolf. Well, now I've got a full float out, and I don't want to end up coming across a moose and not being able to shoot it. And
you would want the like if you're going on a moose hunt, you want
to have 2 tags.
Yeah, you want the moose tag for sure. But then, instead of buying all 4, you could just say, well, like, okay, realistically, we're not going to see a muskox. Like, we're not hunting remotely close to where the muskox lives, so you can forget about that one and be like, okay, my options are probably like Sitka, deer, wolf, bear, or caribou, and you just pick whatever one's the highest, maybe the bear or the caribou, and say that's my second tag, and I could shoot any of the rest of them. So I can always get my moose, and then I can pick one of the three, you know, because you got the second
Yeah.
most afterwards.
Yeah, so that brings the price way down then from because I was just factoring if I had all 4 tags.
Yeah.
Like I purchased all 4 licenses,
Mm-hmm.
and with it being that I could use it on any lesser value animal, then yeah, I would go up there with 2 tags, spend $1,500,
Right.
and now I've got 4 different species that I could potentially harvest 2 of the 4.
Right.
And
right.
it's like that just, I mean, it just really does make it more doable. Alaska is very, very cheap. Aside from the travel expenses, it's very cheap to do in comparison to most Western states. I mean, like you go up a rung in the animal that you want to get, and when they're over the counter and you don't have to put in $2,000-$3,000 in preference points just to try to draw,
right?
Like to actually be in the ballpark of drawing. You know, there's the freak kid that draws it with his first 4 points, but that happens every couple of years to one person. Whereas, you know, once you're in the 18 to 20 point range, it becomes an actual thing that you could potentially draw that year. But it's like you're so deep into it at that point. I don't know where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be doing. I don't know if I'm going to be alive in 20 years. Hopefully I will.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you. Like I think there's time for both. And I think like it's good to save up or have like that ultimate long-term strategy. Like Randy Newberg's been talking about it the last couple of years because he's been starting to cash in on some of his like lifetime hunts. And he's like, I've been saving $200 a month since I graduated college to be able to do these things. And so he did the Cassiars in British Columbia, and he shot a mountain caribou and a big moose. And then he did the Yukon and shot another giant caribou and another giant moose. And then he's doing, I think it's the Henry Mountains in Utah. And he just talks about like, I've been saving my entire life and you know, after these 3 hunts, I'm going to be kind of wiped out. But that's why I've been putting this money aside for all of these years is to do these 3 hunts. And it took me, you know, 30 years of saving and investing this money. And I think there's a time and a place for that, for sure. Like there's certain species, you know, mountain goat, giant brown bears, you know, doll sheep, or basically at this point any of the sheep species where you're going to need some money. Like you're going to probably need to get guided. You're going to need some money. And if that's what you want to do, like there's a time and a place to save your whole life to do something like that. I just don't think you need to do it for moose. I think there's other options.
Yeah, it's really tough for me. There's so many opportunities out there that I'm realizing are attainable that it's hard for me each year to dial in and say, this is what I want to do, because there's hunts that I simply don't want to give up. You know, like my Wisconsin whitetail hunt every year. It's like, that's one of the things I look most forward to.
Right.
Missouri archery hunting. It's like to take away from that. I already take away from the rut to go out and rifle hunt, which this year, if I archery hunt Colorado instead, I can rut hunt here in Missouri again, which would be great because I had 2 really, really nice bucks on camera during daylight 3 days while I was in Colorado. And it was tough for me, you know, knowing that, man, if I would have been there, I could have got up in a certain tree, and that the one deer came through 3 times during daylight, hung out in front of my camera for, you know, 5 to 10 minutes. And it, not that it's a guarantee, but I had a really good chance of shooting him if I was around.
Right.
But then I get other wrenches thrown in my plans. Like I had a guy reach out from South Africa, and he wants me to come over there and hunt with him free of charge. All I have to do is get there. He said, you can come over here, you can hunt. And the funny enough thing is, I had a guest on, actually, I believe she was on the Western Rookie podcast before we switched over. We may have already switched over, and she was on the Nomadic Outdoorsman podcast. But she actually went and did a hunt with him, same type of deal.
Oh,
and
yeah.
she's like, it was unbelievable. And she is now kind of an ambassador for him stateside to help people get these hunts lined up and figure out exactly what they need. But he's like, hey, just come over and make some content while you're here. It's promo for us, and we'll cover the expense of the animals. And so things like that. In the past week and a half, I've had 3 other people it was crazy. It kind of comes in waves for whatever reason. I had 3 other people from Africa reach out asking if I would want to come hunt, and I didn't dive into the details of it. But it's like those are hunts that I want to do eventually.
Right.
But I think I would still choose Yukon moose over going to Africa and killing several species.
Yeah, it's tough. There's always too much opportunity. And there's like the big hunts that you want to do every year that you're never going to miss, like the deer hunt, the elk hunt. And then, but like what also throws a wrench in it for me is like there's all these like other hunts that you want to do in a year. And so for like me, my perfect year would be like archery elk hunting in September, do an antelope hunt in October, do a mule deer hunt in November, whitetail hunt in between. But like, you know, that's already a lot of hunts in one year, especially if you have a day job like I do and you have a limited vacation. But then it's like, you know, I was talking about this, like, you know, obviously you and I, we both want to go shed hunting. Well, that's 3-4 days at least, right?
Yep.
I was going to bring this up earlier. I would love to do a Western coyote hunt. Like, I'd love to go out to Montana and
Oh my goodness,
whack 20, 30 coyotes in a long weekend. Like, I have acquaintances that I think the record's like 58 coyotes in a long weekend that they've shot. I think that'd be a blast.
Jeez.
But it's like, how do you mix that stuff in when you're trying to plan like a moose hunt and an elk hunt and a deer hunt, and all of a sudden your time's gone?
Dude, this year I knew was going to be limited. In fact, I canceled 3 trips, one for a funeral and then 2 others just because with my wife doing surrogacy, that's a lot of appointments.
Right.
Her being pregnant, you know, it's a lot more challenging for me to say, hey, I'm going to take this time for me when, you know, we've got 2 kids and a dog and life still goes on even while I'm hunting. And so to put all of that on her, it's hard for me to just walk away and say, sorry, I got to go do this.
Right.
And so this year I knew, in fact, I ended up hunting less than I ever have, even at home. I just didn't get out very much, which was tough because I had some of the biggest deer I've ever had on trail camera. In fact, I mean, this didn't really affect any of it, but I had a picture of a buck and several videos of this buck, and he's the biggest buck I've ever had on trail camera. He ended up scoring 183.
Oof.
And I lost the property that he was on. That I had access to this property for 7-8 years, and I found out this year that the owner of it sold it, and those guys went in, and in the second month of owning it, which would have been the first month of archery season, they ended up killing this deer. And yeah, he scored 183 inches. And so it's things. I mean, it's been a tough year to have to step back from hunting a lot, but this is her last surrogacy journey. Now going into 2024, I'm like, okay, I plan on doing a lot more hunting. I plan on ramping it up again, but I think we're going to buy a house.
Yeah.
And we're looking at 2 different houses right now, and one of them is a really good fit. I mean, I think it would be awesome. I ended up buying a side-by-side this year. Lots of big things happening, but I go, okay, with buying a house, you know, is that going to give me more or less freedom to go and hunt and do these big trips? Because I just feel like at this point with 2 young kids and, you know, coming up on our 10th year of marriage, I just feel like right now is probably when I'm going to hunt the least. You know, when the kids are more independent, when they have their licenses, like they can drive themselves to and from things, that's going to be a little bit different. But right now, I know that there's hunts that I have to give up that I would love to do each year. So I think realistically, I'm going to try and do 5 trips this year.
5 fall trips or 5 throughout the whole year?
I think I'm going to do 5 throughout the year, like big trips.
Okay.
And 3 of those are probably going to be fall trips. 2 of those will probably be family trips where we go down to Florida and I add in a couple days of hunting while I'm down there.
Right.
Or, you know, if we go out as a family somewhere else. Like Wisconsin, I don't really count that as a hunting trip. But this year I went up and archery hunted. This was my first year out of all the years growing up in Wisconsin, my first year hunting public land in Wisconsin. And I went out there and I stuck a big buck with my bow on an island that I floated my canoe into. I figured out this tiny 70-acre island and connected on a big buck. And didn't end up recovering him. Went back there, and instead of hunting the family property, I mean, it's not my family's property, but I call it the family property because my family's hunted it for 30 years. Instead of going there opening day, I drove through the night back to this island and ended up killing a big buck with my rifle, and then got to lay hands on that buck that I shot with my bow. Another hunter killed it opening day.
Oh,
and
wow.
so it's like, that's a trip that I'm going to add in,
Right.
you know? Dude, it was crazy, man. I don't know if we've talked about that hunt at all.
Yeah, you called
you
me
and I have.
and told me the story of that hunting with that crew and then going back and being able to see the buck. But yeah, like it definitely sounded like a great spot to hunt, especially for public land. I mean, for public land, phenomenal, but just a great spot in general.
It was public land, 40 acres of hardwood surrounded by 30 acres of cattails. And on that 40 acres of hardwoods, we found over 80 scrapes in early October.
Wow.
And then when I went back, I only walked about 200 yards of the island and found probably 12.5 fresh rubs. I mean, like absolutely shredded trees. And so I'm like, okay, there's a couple mature bucks here. And sure enough, two of them were killed on opening day. A third guy out there was basically 3 guys hunted that island. I didn't know the other 2. They just happened to float out after I did.
Yeah.
And out of the 3 guys out there, all 3 of us killed bucks opening day within 30 minutes of shooting light. And so I'm like, this is a spot that I want to focus on again next year.
Right.
I'd like to get back up there and do that with my bow. So that's going to be one of my trips. But, you know, hopefully I can start cashing in some of these points. I'm going to continue to put in for moose, continue to try and draw moose, both in Maine and in Colorado. I might expand the states that I put in for points this year. I don't know how many states I want to do that with. I'd like to continue to learn certain places and just get better at hunting those places instead of casting such a wide net. But it should be a fun year, man. I'm hoping to have a really, really good 2024.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that too. You know, I think we got a lot of big things on our end as well. Excited to get out west for the first time hunting with my wife. Hopefully we find some cool sheds together, and then obviously building up the farm we just bought. And our first, you know, we'll have our first full year on the farm. That'll be exciting as well. And when you talked about points, I just pulled it up. I have 93 points in the West.
Dang.
So.
Heck yeah.
My answer is going to be all of them. Build points in all of the states, Dan.
I know. I really need to. You know, it definitely comes with a price tag, but for me, I feel like it's worth it. And to start getting my kids points certain places.
Yeah.
You know, my son.
Ooh, Arizona.
He's shown an interest.
For Arizona, it's like $10. You don't have to buy the hunting license for minors.
Perfect. See, and that's my thing. It's like, I really hate that model where you have to buy the hunting license and then you get reimbursed. I think, I don't know. It's really tough for me to put in for that type of stuff because I just feel, I understand why they do it, but I also don't think it's right the way they do it.
That would be like an entire podcast on its own.
Oh, it really, really would. And so I'm like, I like the states where I can buy the preference points. They're still pricey, you know, just for the hope of one day hunting.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to do that. But the whole like pay for the license, get the money back. I just don't agree with that model. I hated when Colorado did it, and I'm glad they did away with it.
Right.
So I think for now I'm going to expand some of the states. Keep building the connections I have in other states because there are a lot of offers to go and hunt places. This year, I definitely want to try to get back out on a mountain lion hunt. And then one of my number one bucket list hunts is actually trapping, going out with an experienced trapper. And I've had a couple people that I've talked to now. One is in Idaho, and he traps anything and everything. Another one's up in Canada, and so Canada might be a place that I look towards hunting this year. I've now built man, I think 3 solid connections up there. And they're guys that, those guys who just find a way to get it done time and time again.
Yeah.
So
that would be awesome. That would be incredible. So, well, it sounds like you have a pretty full year planned. I'm sure things will come up as the year goes on as well. So we'll have to maybe do like an annual co-host podcast and like break down the year before and then talk about what's coming up on the next year. Be a little fun little thing to do.
Dude, I'd be down for that. And we need to get on an actual hunt together. I mean, we've gone and found antlers now. We need to go and try to get on some animals. I mean, pigs are an easy one to do all over the place, but I think I'm going to Oklahoma this year for tack. I just talked to a buddy of mine who's bringing some guys up from Florida, and it's pretty close to home. I've never been to a tack event, so that might be another fun trip that I do for a weekend.
Oh yeah, that would be a blast. So no, yeah, we definitely need to get on a hunt. We need to shoot something before the horns fall off. And pigs is something I'd be kind of curious about too. So we'll have to reconvene on that after application season is over and we find out what we've drawn and what we've got in the books. But
yeah, man, I'm all about it.
So
let's stay in touch on that, and then let me know if you want to expand to new places. I've got that spot picked out in Utah, and I'm telling you, it is a mule deer hunter's paradise.
Oh, I always want to expand. I need to expand strategically because my wife has turned into a little killer as well, and she actually outshot me this year on the whitetails. So
yeah, heck yeah,
she shot her first buck with a bow, first buck off the home farm here. Shot a doe in the early antler of the season. So, and our deer hunting was down. So she shot 2, I shot 1. So she took the lead this year. Now our season's wrapped up. So we don't have a trophy, but if we did, she would have it, hanging on her side of the room. So
is she competitive? Is she rubbing that in your face?
She's not competitive unless she's winning. And then,
okay.
Yeah. So, she's not really competitive, but she's like, hey, you've been doing this bow hunting for a while. You haven't shot any bucks with your bow. You just seem to shoot does with your bow. And I'm like, well, I don't see very many bucks I want to shoot when I'm bow hunting. So, a little bit of dry spell. But yeah, no, we've been shooting 3D League, and I think she's going to want to start doing some Western hunts with her bow too. So that could be fun. Fun chance to get out and
that would be
stock
sweet.
something. But yeah, we'll stay in touch.
You guys need to come to Bow Fest in northern Wisconsin this year.
That is something that I think I want to do for sure. Like, I think that would be, this year we had just moved into the place, and it was like our last, like one of our first and last weekends that we both were off and didn't have anything on the calendar, like all summer long. And so we're like, we just can't keep, burning the candle at both ends. So we took just a weekend to stay home and hang out together. But this next year, hopefully we have a little bit more stability throughout the summer. And that's one thing I think we would both love, especially now that, she just bought a brand new Hoyt and she's been shooting 3D League and liking it a lot. So I think that would be really fun for her to do as well.
Dude, there's a lot of prizes you can win. I had one guy, I emceed the award ceremony this year, and I had one guy that ended up winning 3 bows. And then a whole bunch of other stuff because he did like the paid. Yeah, he did the paid ticket deal where you have to shoot through a steel plate with a 2-inch hole.
Oh yeah.
And every time you make it through it, you pay to shoot every time, but every time you make it through it, your name goes in or your ticket goes in.
Yeah.
And so he ended up winning a ton of stuff. But my goal is to be up there this year. It's going to be contingent on when Sam has the baby, though.
Yeah.
So as of right now, I'm going, and I won't know for a fact until we get a little bit closer.
Yeah. Well, I will hopefully see you there.
Yes, sir.
So, but anyway, thanks for hopping back on the old podcast with me. Feels like old times, and I hope you drive safe on the rest of your trip up to Wisconsin.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, and thank you for listening, folks.